Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make homemade hamburger buns. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I am sharing an easy recipe for homemade hamburger buns. This is a yeast dough, so if you're a little intimidated by that, I'm going to be walking you through all of the steps. This recipe is great for your next barbecue or cookout. I really think you're going to love it. Now the first ingredient you're going to need is 1 cup of water. We're going to be adding 1/4 cup of whole milk to this. And this will probably not come as a surprise to you, but we're going to need to heat up this milk and water mixture because we're going to be using it to proof our yeast. Now you could do this in a small saucepan. I'm just going to pop mine over in the microwave and heat it up until it gets to be between 105 and 115 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature of your liquid is important because if it's too hot, it'll kill your yeast, and if it's not hot enough, your yeast isn't going to bloom like it needs to. So you are going to want to use a thermometer to make sure that this is the right temperature, and you're also going to want to just gently stir it before testing the temperature, as sometimes in the microwave you'll have pockets of liquid that are a little bit warmer than the rest. Once your milk-water mixture is at temperature, we're going to add this to a large bowl. And we will add our yeast. I'm using active dry yeast today. You'll need 2½ teaspoons. And we're just going to sprinkle this over our milk mixture. To help boost the growth of our yeast, I'm also going to add just a pinch of granulated sugar. That's probably about a ½ teaspoon if you want to get technical. And then I'm just going to stir everything together just gently and briefly. We're going to let this sit undisturbed for about 5 to 10 minutes or until the yeast is nice and foamy. Now, if your yeast does not foam, it's probably dead. You're going to have to toss it out and start over. All right, our yeast is looking pretty good, so we're going to add a little bit more granulated sugar. This is 2 tablespoons. We're also going to be adding 1 egg plus 1 egg yolk. This extra yolk helps make your hamburger buns a little more rich, a little more tender. Now don't throw out your egg white. You can cover this, set it aside. We will use it before we bake our buns. We're going to brush it on top. We'll also be adding 5 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter. You don't want this to be too hot when you add it. I melted mine about 5–10 minutes ago and let it sit until it cooled down a bit. Once you have all of that butter in there, we are going to stir these ingredients together. Make sure you scramble those egg yolks up a bit till everything is nicely combined. Chasing the egg yolks around in here. You could absolutely make this dough in a stand mixer instead. That'll do most of the heavy lifting for you, especially once we add the flour, but as you can see, easy to do by hand too. I have a couple lumps of butter in here too. That's totally fine. They're nice and soft. They're not going to be a problem, and they'll be nicely incorporated into the dough once we add our flour. All right, the next ingredient I want to talk to you about is the flour. So when you're making hamburger buns, I highly recommend that you use a bread flour. It's going to give your buns a nicer lift. It's going to make them more rounded. It's just going to make them a little chewier and just taste better overall. If you don't have bread flour, yes, you can substitute all-purpose flour. Just keep in mind you're going to lose some of that lift. Now, we are going to start with 3½ cups of bread flour. We're also going to be using 1½ teaspoons of salt, and I like to just toss this in with the flour at this point and stir it up. Now we're going to start gradually adding this flour to the dough. I'm going to add about half of it at first. We'll stir everything together until it's combined. Now, chances are you're probably going to need a little bit more or even a little bit less flour than what I've called for. Anytime you're making or you're baking anything with yeast, the amount of flour can vary. We're really going to judge how much we need based off the consistency of the dough rather than just what the recipe says. Now, I'll show you exactly what to look for in just a moment. Obviously, this dough is really, really soft. It's not coming together at all, so I feel comfortable adding the rest of my flour at this point. Now, what we're looking for with today's dough is we want it to start clinging to itself. It should be beginning to pull away from the sides of the bowl. If you touch it, it'll be a little bit sticky, a little bit tacky, because this is actually a softer dough than a lot of the other recipes that I've shared with you, a lot of the yeast recipes I've shared with you in the past. This is looking better, but we're still definitely not there yet. So I'm going to add a little bit of flour at a time until we get to that consistency. Now, if you're using a stand mixer, you'd want to be using your dough hook for this part. If you're not using your stand mixer, then you're getting a pretty good arm workout with me today. Still a little bit too soft, so we'll add more flour. All right, this consistency is starting to look pretty good. If I touch it, it's a little bit sticking to my fingers, but a lot of it's not coming off of my fingers like it did the last time I touched it. So I feel pretty good about transferring this over to a clean surface and beginning to knead it. So we're just going to knead this by hand for several minutes until it forms a nice, smooth, elastic dough. And if your dough is sticking to the counter, or if it seems just too sticky, you can absolutely add a little bit more flour to it and knead that into the dough. And if you are using a stand mixer, you can just continue to knead this until it's smooth and elastic. You'll want to use your dough hook attachment. Just keep in mind, this is a soft dough, so you shouldn't really have a big problem with this. But if your mixer is straining, if it's struggling to get everything combined, if it's jumping around, you're going to want to move your dough over to the counter and do it by hand. These hamburger rolls are good, but they are not worth killing a several $100 mixer. Oh, sticking a little bit here. So we are going to need a little bit more flour. Don't be afraid to add more flour if you need to. This is the time to do it. This should be a pretty soft dough though, so a little bit of sticking is okay. Just if it's sticking so much that you can't work it together, add more flour. All right, after about, I'd say 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes of kneading, our dough is looking pretty good. It's a little bit sticky still, but it's nice, which it should be. It should be a little bit sticky, but it's nice and elastic. It's formed a nice ball. So we are going to go ahead and transfer this to a lightly oiled, clean bowl. Just gonna drizzle this with a little bit of olive oil and then use a paper towel just to run that in the bottom and up the sides of the bowl. We'll place our dough in here and you'll just wanna turn it so that it's completely coated with oil on all sides. Cover it with plastic wrap. And we'll let this sit in a warm, draft-free place until it has doubled in size. This usually takes me about an hour. It might take you a little bit longer depending on how cool it is in your kitchen. Once your dough has doubled in size, we're ready to move on to the next steps. We're going to just gently deflate our dough. It's a little sticky, that's fine. Transfer it to a clean, lightly floured surface. Now, I like to make 8 hamburger buns out of this dough. They are a little bit on the larger side, so if you want to make smaller buns, that'll be fine, but today I'm going to be showing you 8 of them. Now, the easiest way I've found to divide the dough is just to start by dividing it pretty much evenly in half. And then we'll divide each half in half. And repeat. Now form each of these into a smooth, round ball. If the dough is sticking too much to your hands, just lightly dust your hands with flour. We'll transfer these rolls to a baking sheet. I'm using a standard cookie sheet. I've lined mine with parchment paper. And another thing I'm going to do to keep the rolls from sticking is I'm just going to lightly dust the parchment paper with a bit of cornmeal. Not very much, I'd say this is probably about a tablespoon maybe. Now we'll space our dough evenly on our baking sheet. We've got 8, not 6, so I gotta put 4 on each side. A little baby one right there. Guess I could have cut them a little more evenly, huh? Call that one a slider bun. Now, if you notice any air bubbles forming on the surface of your buns, you're going to want to take a toothpick and just carefully pop those. We don't really have any big ones in today's buns. Maybe we'll see some after they rise. If we don't catch these now, you're just going to have blisters or bubbles in your finished buns. Not a big deal, but not very pretty. So once you've shaped all of your hamburger buns, we're just going to cover them loosely with plastic wrap. And we'll place these in a warm, draft-free place until they've risen in size by about 50%. Now at this point, I also like to preheat my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the temperature they are going to need to bake on. Now before we pop these buns in the oven, we're going to brush the tops of them. I'm going to be brushing half of the buns with egg white, the egg white we reserved from earlier, and the other half with melted butter. You just want to gently brush the surface of each bun. If you see any bubbles forming in the surface, like this one right here, you're just going to want to pop it with a toothpick. So I like brushing the buns with egg white because once the buns have finished baking, they'll be a nice shiny golden brown color. Also, if you like to add sesame seeds to the tops of your hamburger buns, the egg white is going to make them stick. Now the other half I'm going to brush with a little bit of melted butter, and you can use either salted or unsalted. I melted about 1.5 tablespoons of butter for half of the rolls. Now, while the egg white does give the buns a nice color and it lets you adhere the sesame seeds, I honestly prefer using butter. Butter is not going to brown the rolls on the outside quite as nicely, but it makes the crust, I guess you would call it, softer. It makes the roll a little bit softer, and it has a nicer flavor. Now, you can choose whichever one you prefer. I just wanted to show you both options. Also, I'm going to toss a couple of sesame seeds on top of the buttered rolls, but they're not going to stick on once you cut into the roll. A couple of them will, but most of them will fall off. Now we'll take these over to our 375 Fahrenheit preheated oven, where they're going to need to bake for about 20 minutes. So I think you can see which ones look better. These that are nice golden brown were the ones that were brushed with the egg wash. But I think when you do your taste test, if you're anything like me, you're going to actually prefer these lighter, paler ones that were brushed with butter. But you choose whichever one works best for you. Just let me know what you like better. All right, well, that is how simple it is to make the burger buns. Let me go and slice into one for you. And it's fine if they kind of grew together in the oven, not a big deal. And you'll want to use a sharp bread knife to just gently saw through the bun. Sure you guys get a nice look at that soft interior. Guys, these buns are so soft. They're perfect for your next cookout, serving with a burger, serving with a chicken sandwich. It's actually what I'm using them for tonight, chicken sandwiches. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed today's easy recipe. And if you try this one out, please let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is all you need.